People ask me about secrets, urine, salt, strange rituals. They want the shortcut, but listen carefully. The secret was never the substance. It was your ability to endure discomfort, to follow discipline when no one is watching, to master yourself instead of chasing miracles. Those who don't and understand this will copy rituals. Those who do will transform their lives. People hear about a secret like this and immediately their mind runs toward the object. They ask, what is it? How do I use it? How fast does it work? And in doing so, they reveal the real problem. They are not searching for truth. They are searching for relief without responsibility. They believe power lies outside of them, hidden in some strange combination, some ritual, some shortcut that will save them from effort. But that has never been how strength is built. Look closely at any ancient practice, any disciplined path, any warrior tradition. The tools are always simple, sometimes even uncomfortable, and that discomfort is intentional because the real work is not happening in the body, it is happening in the mind. The object is only there to expose you, to show you how quickly you resist, how fast you doubt, how eager you are to quit when things stop feeling pleasant. People misunderstand this because they have been trained to chase comfort. They want improvement that feels good, growth that does not disturb their habits, discipline that does not challenge their identity. But discipline is not designed to be comfortable. Discipline is designed to make you honest. Honest about how weak your commitment is. Honest about how easily you negotiate with yourself. Honest about how often you say you want change, but only if it does not cost you anything. The so-called secret is never the substance. The salt, the ritual, the practice, these are mirrors. They reflect your relationship with consistency. Can you do something simple every day without needing applause? Can you stay committed when no one is watching? Can you follow through when your mind starts creating excuses that sound intelligent but are rooted in fear? This is why people copy the outer form and see no results. They imitate without embodying. They perform without discipline. They want the reward without respecting the process. But nature does not work like that. The body does not respond to curiosity. It responds to order. And order is created through repetition, restraint, and patience. When you submit yourself to discipline, something shifts. You stop asking, does this work? And start asking, am I consistent? You stop blaming the method and start observing your own resistance. That is when growth begins. Not because of what you are using, but because of who you are becoming through the act of commitment. The real secret is this: anything that trains your ability to endure discomfort with awareness will strengthen you. Anything that demands consistency will expose you. And anything that exposes you gives you the opportunity to change. That is the work most people avoid. And that is why most people stay the same. So if you are looking for the secret, stop staring at the object. Look at your discipline, because when discipline becomes your foundation, nothing external needs to convince you anymore. And that is where true power begins. People often look at ancient teachings and think they were obsessed with strange practices, unusual rules, or symbolic rituals. They assumed the past was less intelligent, less scientific, less refined. But this misunderstanding comes from reading wisdom too literally. Ancient knowledge was never meant to be consumed like instructions. It was meant to be lived, felt, and slowly understood. Symbols were used not to confuse people, but to protect the depth of the lesson from shallow thinking. A symbol forces you to pause. It interrupts the habit of rushing toward conclusions. When you hear something unusual, the mind cannot rely on routine logic anymore. It must become present, and in that presence, learning begins. This is why ancient paths spoke in metaphors, parables, and rituals that seem strange to the modern eye. They were training attention, not offering convenience. People today want shortcuts because they are disconnected from patience. They want clear steps, instant proof, and immediate results. But wisdom does not unfold on demand. It unfolds through relationship, through repetition, through reflection. Symbols slow you down. They demand humility. They test whether you are willing to stay with something long enough to let it change you. When someone focuses only on the surface of a practice, they miss its purpose entirely. They argue about whether it works, whether it makes sense, whether it fits into their existing beliefs. But transformation does not require your agreement. It requires your participation. The symbol is not there to convince you. It is there to confront you, to show you how quickly you reject what you do not understand. In disciplined traditions, nothing was random. Every act, no matter how simple or unusual, carried a deeper intention. To observe resistance, to refine awareness, to train the will. When you misunderstand the symbol, you reduce it to superstition. When you understand it, you realize it was never about the act itself. It was about shaping the mind that performs the act. This is why copying ancient rituals without understanding leads nowhere. Without context, without discipline, without respect for the process, the practice becomes empty. It turns into performance instead of training. And performance feeds the ego, while training dissolves it. One makes you feel special, the other makes you strong. The modern mind wants proof before commitment. The ancient path demands commitment before understanding. Not because it is blind, but because some truths only reveal themselves after effort. You cannot explain strength to someone who refuses to train. You cannot explain stillness to someone who never sits with discomfort. The symbol is a doorway. It is not the destination. If you stop at the doorway and argue about its shape, you will never enter. But if you step through with discipline and patience, what waits on the other side is not mystery, but clarity. And clarity comes only to those willing to walk the path, not just analyze it. The moment discomfort appears, most people assume something is wrong. They think pain means danger, resistance means failure, and unease means they should stop. But discomfort is not your enemy. It is a signal. It tells you exactly where growth is waiting. And this is where most people turn back, not because they are incapable, but because they have been conditioned to escape the moment things become difficult. Discomfort is the gatekeeper. It stands at the edge of every meaningful change. When you try to build strength, your muscles resist. When you try to calm the mind, your thoughts become louder. When you try to live with discipline, your habits fight back. This reaction is natural. It does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are finally doing something that matters. People want motivation that feels good, inspiration that excites them without demanding anything in return. But real transformation does not arrive wrapped in comfort. It arrives disguised as inconvenience, as boredom, as irritation, as the urge to quit. And the question is never whether discomfort will appear. The question is whether you will learn to stand in it without running. When you avoid discomfort, you train weakness. You teach the mind that it only needs to endure when conditions are pleasant. Over time, this creates fragility. Small challenges feel overwhelming. Minor obstacles feel like personal attacks. Life becomes something you must constantly manage instead of something you can meet with stability. But when you stay with discomfort, something shifts. You begin to observe instead of react. You notice the urge to escape, and you do not obey it immediately. You breathe, you remain, and in that moment, the mind learns a new lesson. This sensation will not destroy me. That lesson changes everything. Discomfort is temporary, but the strength gained from meeting it stays with you. Each time you choose presence over avoidance, you expand your capacity. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once controlled you loses its grip. This is not because discomfort disappears, but because you are no longer afraid of it. Most people misunderstand this process. They believe strong individuals do not feel resistance. In truth, they feel it clearly. The difference is that they do not negotiate with it. They do not ask whether it is convenient. They understand that resistance is the price of entry, and they pay it willingly. The path is not about seeking pain. It is about not being ruled by it. You do not need to suffer unnecessarily, but you must be willing to endure what is necessary. Growth asks for your attention, your patience, and your courage. It asks you to stay when everything inside you wants to leave. If you can learn to remain steady in discomfort, you will discover that the gate was never locked. It was waiting for you to stop turning away. Many people believe their BO. DY is the problem. They say they are tired, unmotivated, weak, unfocused. They speak as if the body is stubborn, uncooperative, working against them. But the body is not confused. It is extremely loyal. It follows instructions precisely. The only question is who is giving those instructions and how consistent they are. Your body listens to what you repeatedly tell it, not with words, but with actions. If your actions are chaotic, your body reflects chaos. If your actions lack rhythm, your energy becomes unstable. This is not a flaw, it is intelligence. The body adapts to the environment you create for it, and for most people, that environment is ruled by impulse. The mind jumps from desire to desire, reacting instead of directing. One day it wants discipline, the next day it wants comfort. One moment it promises change, the next it negotiates rest. The body receives mixed signals and responds accordingly. It conserves energy, it hesitates, it waits. Not because it is lazy, but because it has learned that your commands are unreliable. When you begin to train the mind, everything changes. Training does not mean forcing, it means bringing order, simple order, waking up at the same time, moving with intention, eating with awareness, resting without guilt. These small acts tell the body one clear message. There is leadership here. Once the mind becomes steady, the body follows without resistance. Strength increases, focus sharpens, endurance grows. Not because you pushed harder, but because you remove confusion. The body thrives under clarity. It does not need motivation, it needs consistency. People often search for external solutions, supplements, methods, techniques. They believe the right tool will finally fix their lack of energy or discipline. But tools cannot replace leadership. If the mind remains untrained, no method will last. The body will always return T. Oh, the level of order it is given. This is why ancient disciplines began with the mind. Before strength, before skill, before mastery, there was structure. When structure is present, effort becomes efficient. You do not waste energy fighting yourself, you move in one direction, and that alignment creates power. The body does not need to be controlled, it needs to be guided. When the mind stops arguing with itself, the body stops resisting. What once felt like effort becomes natural. What once required force becomes habit. Most people underestimate how obedient the body truly is. They think change is difficult because they feel resistance. But that resistance is not from the body. It is from the untrained mind that keeps changing its mind. Train the mind to be clear, calm, and consistent, and the body will respond without question. It always has. Most people are not lacking information. They are lacking patience. They know what to do. They have heard the advice. They have watched the videos, read the books, saved the quotes. Yet their lives remain unchanged. Not because the knowledge is wrong, but because they refuse to stay with the process long enough for it to work. They want certainty before commitment. They want guarantees before effort. They want to see results before they give themselves fully. But growth does not respond to conditions. It responds to consistency. Nature does not rush to prove itself to you. It asks you to show up again and again without demanding immediate reward. Impatience disguises itself as intelligence. It says, this should work faster. It says, maybe there is a better method. It says, I will try something else. And in that constant switching, nothing has time to take root. Seeds do not grow because you keep digging them up to check if they are working. Process is invisible at first. This is what makes it difficult. You wake up early, nothing changes. You train, nothing seems different. You restrain yourself, and the reward does not arrive. And in that quiet period, the mind begins to doubt. It asks, why am I doing this? Is this worth it? That moment is the test. Those who respect the process understand something others miss. They understand that change is happening beneath the surface. The body is adapting, the mind is reorganizing, habits are being rewritten. This work cannot be rushed. If you interfere with it by constantly seeking proof, you slow it down. People want dramatic transformations because they are exciting. But lasting change is subtle. It is built through small, uncelebrated actions performed daily. No applause, no validation, just repetition, and repetition builds identity. Over time, what you do becomes who you are. When you respect the process, You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking whether you feel like it today. You act because it is time to act. This removes friction. Discipline becomes simple, not easy, but simple, and simplicity is powerful. Most people fail not because they choose the wrong path, but because they abandon the right one too soon. They mistake boredom for failure. They mistake slow progress for no progress. They mistake discomfort for inefficiency. But those who remain, those who stay when enthusiasm fades, those who trust the process without demanding constant reassurance, they experience something different. Momentum. And once momentum builds, effort feels lighter. What once required willpower becomes natural movement. The process was always working. You just needed to stop interrupting it. Most people are not lacking information. They are lacking patience. They already know what to do. They have heard the advice, watched the lessons, repeated the words. Yet nothing changes, not because the knowledge is incorrect, but because they not stay with the process long enough for it to shape them. They want certainty before commitment. They want proof before effort. They want results before responsibility. But life does not work that way. Nature does not rush to reassure you. It responds to consistency, not urgency. It asks one simple question: can you show up again tomorrow without needing immediate reward? Impatience often wears the mask of intelligence. It sounds reasonable. It says, this should be faster, this method might be better, maybe I am wasting my time. And so people switch paths, switch routines, switch identities, always moving, never arriving. Like someone digging up seeds every day to see if they have grown, they destroy the very thing they are trying to create. Process is quiet. In the beginning, it offers no applause. You wake up earlier, nothing changes. You train your body, nothing is visible. You discipline your habits, and life looks the same. This is where most people quit. They mistake silence for failure. They mistake slowness for stagnation. But beneath the surface, the work is happening. The body is adjusting. The mind is reorganizing. New patterns are forming, even if you cannot see them yet. This kind of change cannot be rushed. It unfolds on its own timeline. When you demand proof too early, you interfere with the process. Those who understand this stop asking, is this working? They ask, am I consistent? They understand that consistency is the only language nature listens to, not motivation, not excitement, just repetition performed with attention. Respecting the process means letting go of constant evaluation. You do not measure yourself every day. You do not judge every effort. You simply do the work because it is time to do the work. This removes mental friction. Discipline becomes simpler, not easy, but clear. Most people abandon the right path too soon. They think progress should feel dramatic. They think growth should be visible. But real transformation is subtle. It happens quietly through ordinary actions repeated daily. Over time, those actions stop feeling like effort and start feeling like identity. When you stay with the process, momentum builds. And once momentum exists, discipline no longer feels heavy. It carries you forward. The process was never failing you. You were just unwilling to wait. At the end of every search for secrets, methods, and shortcuts, there is a quiet realization that many people avoid. Nothing outside of you was ever meant to save you. Tools can assist, practices can guide, teachings can point the way, but none of them can replace self-mastery. And without self-mastery, every secret eventually loses its power. People think self-mastery is control over others, over circumstances, over outcomes. But real mastery is much closer and much harder. It is mastery over impulse, over reaction, over the voice in your mind that constantly seeks comfort, distraction, and escape. It is the ability to pause before you act, to choose deliberately instead of automatically. Most suffering does not come from lack. It comes from lack of control, eating without awareness, speaking without restraint, reacting without reflection. These small moments shape your life more than any dramatic event, and yet they are the moments most people surrender without resistance. Self-mastery begins with observation. You watch your patterns without judgment. You notice how quickly the mind reaches for pleasure and how strongly it avoids discomfort. You see how often you betray your own intentions for temporary relief. This awareness is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. You cannot change what you refuse to see. As discipline develops, you stop being pulled in every direction. Desire no longer commands immediate action. Emotion no longer dictates behavior. You still feel everything, but you are no longer owned by what you feel. This is freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to not be controlled by every urge. People look for secrets because they want external power, but external power is unstable. It depends on circumstances. It disappears when conditions change. Self-mastery, on the other hand, stays with you. No one can take it. No situation can remove it. It allows you to remain steady when life becomes unpredictable. When you master yourself, you no longer chase shortcuts. You understand that every challenge is training. Every discomfort is instruction. Every delay is an opportunity to strengthen patience. Life stops feeling like an obstacle and starts feeling like a practice. This is why the search for secrets eventually ends. Not because the world runs out of techniques, but because you realize you no longer need them. You become disciplined. You become consistent. You become aware. And from that place, your actions are aligned. The greatest transformation does not come from discovering something hidden. It comes from becoming someone disciplined enough to live the truth openly,